What's up, everyone? I'm Cade, and I need to tell you something that's been eating me alive for weeks. You've probably seen the headlines, the drama, the absolute chaos that became my life. But what you don't know is the real story behind what happened during that challenge that nearly destroyed everything I've worked for. 3 weeks ago, I was living my dream. 4 years of grinding, creating content, building this community with you amazing people, and finally, I felt like I was making it. My channel had just hit 800,000 subscribers, brands were reaching out daily, and I had this incredible opportunity that felt like it would change my life forever. The Ultimate Endurance Challenge. Maybe you heard about it. $50,000, 20 of the biggest creators competing in this massive warehouse in downtown LA, live-streamed to over 2 million viewers. When I got that invitation email, I literally screamed so loud my neighbors called to check if I was okay. This was it. This was my moment to prove I belonged with the big names, to show everyone that small-town Cade from Ohio could compete with anyone. I spent 3 months preparing. I'm talking about waking up at 5 a.m. for cardio, studying puzzle patterns until my eyes burned, practicing mental challenges until I could solve them in my sleep. My girlfriend Sarah thought I was losing my mind, but she supported me anyway. My parents, who still didn't quite understand what I did for a living, suddenly started bragging to their friends about their son, the influencer. The energy when I walked into that warehouse was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Cameras everywhere, production crew running around with headsets, and these massive screens showing the live chat going absolutely insane. 2 million people watching in real time. 2 million people who would witness what I thought would be my greatest triumph. I remember standing there during the opening ceremony, looking around at creators I'd been watching for years, people with millions of followers who I never thought I'd meet, let alone compete against. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure the microphone would pick it up. But it wasn't just nerves, it was pure excitement. This was everything I'd dreamed of since I posted my first video 4 years ago. The first 2 days went better than I could have imagined. I won the endurance race on day 1, beating creators who had professional trainers and nutritionists. The chat was going wild. My subscriber count was climbing by the thousands every hour. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged in this space. Day 2 brought the memory challenge, and somehow, all those late nights studying paid off. I placed second, just barely behind this creator named Braxton who had like 3 million followers. The guy was intense, constantly strategizing, always watching everyone else's moves. But I respected the competition. I thought we were all there for the same reason, to push ourselves and create amazing content for our audiences. By the end of day 2, I was sitting in second place overall. Second place. Me, the kid who used to film videos in his parents' basement with a webcam from 2015. The production team was interviewing me, asking about my strategy, my background, my journey. I felt like I was floating. But here's what I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly known at the time. While I was celebrating these small victories, while I was texting my family about how well things were going, while I was reading your incredible comments cheering me on, someone was already planning my destruction. Day 3 started like any other. I woke up in the hotel feeling confident, maybe even a little cocky. The puzzle-solving challenge was scheduled for that afternoon, and puzzles had always been my thing. Ever since I was a kid, I could see patterns that others missed, solve riddles that stumped everyone else. This was going to be my moment to take the lead. The warehouse felt different that morning. There was this tension in the air that I couldn't quite place. Some of the other creators seemed on edge, whispering in corners, avoiding eye contact. I figured it was just the pressure getting to everyone. We were halfway through the competition, and the stakes were getting higher. When they revealed the puzzle challenge, my confidence soared. It was this massive combination lock with multiple layers, and we had to solve it using clues hidden throughout the warehouse. The kind of complex multi-step challenge that I'd been practicing for months. I was ready. But as I approached my puzzle station, something felt off. One of the panels looked different, like it had been tampered with, like someone had already started working on it. For a split second, I hesitated. Should I report it? Should I ask for a replacement? But the clock was ticking, the cameras were rolling, and 2 million people were watching. I made a decision that would haunt me for weeks. I used that information, that head start, to solve the puzzle faster than anyone else. I won by a landslide, and in that moment, as confetti fell and the crowd cheered, I felt like I was on top of the world. The chat exploded with congratulations. My phone was buzzing with notifications from friends and family. Sponsors were already sliding into my DMs with offers. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd dreamed of, seemed to be coming true. But that feeling lasted exactly 1 hour and 17 minutes. Because that's when everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, everything I thought I knew about myself and this community, came crashing down in the most brutal, public way imaginable. And it all started with one tweet that would change my life forever. That hour and 17 minutes after my victory was the last time I felt truly happy. I was still riding the high, reading through hundreds of congratulatory comments, when my phone started buzzing differently. Not the excited notifications I'd been getting all week, but something urgent, frantic. The first message that made my stomach drop was from my best friend, Jake. "Dude, you need to see Twitter right now." My hands were literally shaking as I opened the app, and there it was. A tweet from Braxton with a video attached, already at 50,000 retweets in just minutes. Can't believe what I just witnessed. This is why the creator economy is broken. Some people will do anything for views and money. The video showed me at the puzzle station, but the angle made it look like I was getting help from someone off camera. Braxton's voice was overlaying the footage, claiming he saw production crew members giving me hints that the whole thing was rigged in my favor. He made it sound so convincing, so disappointed, like he was just a fellow creator trying to protect the integrity of the competition. I watched that video 5 times, my heart sinking deeper with each replay. The way it was edited, the way Braxton narrated it, made me look guilty even though I knew the truth. But here's the thing that destroyed me, the thing that still keeps me up at night. Within minutes, other creators started retweeting it. People I'd looked up to, people I'd collaborated with, people I thought were my friends. The comments section became a nightmare. I knew something was off about his wins. Small creators will do anything to get ahead. This is so disappointing. I actually like this guy. Each comment felt like a physical punch. These weren't just random trolls. These were real people, my viewers, my community, turning against me based on one edited video. I tried to respond, tried to explain what actually happened, but my tweets were getting buried under an avalanche of hate. The hashtag #CadeCheated was trending worldwide within 2 hours. Worldwide. Do you understand what that feels like? Having millions of people around the globe discussing your supposed moral failure, your character, your integrity, based on a lie. The challenge organizers pulled me aside that evening. I'll never forget that conversation. They sat me down in this sterile conference room, and I could see in their eyes that they'd already made up their minds. "We're launching an investigation," they said, but their tone suggested they were just going through the motions. The damage was done. The narrative was set. That night in my hotel room was the longest night of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop refreshing social media even though every update made me feel worse. My subscriber count was dropping by the thousands every hour. Comments on my old videos were flooded with people calling me a fraud, a cheater, a disappointment. But the worst part wasn't the strangers. It was watching people I cared about distance themselves. Creators I'd collaborated with started unfollowing me. Brands that had been eager to work with me went silent. My own comment section became so toxic that I had to turn off notifications just to maintain my sanity. I called my parents that night, and hearing my mom's voice almost broke me completely. She didn't understand what was happening, why people were saying such horrible things about her son. "But you didn't cheat, right, honey?" she asked, and the fact that even she felt the need to ask that question shattered something inside me. Sarah tried to comfort me, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes too. Not doubt about whether I cheated, but doubt about whether our relationship could survive this kind of public scrutiny. She'd signed up to date a content creator, not to become the girlfriend of the internet's most hated person. The next morning brought a new level of hell. Someone had created a compilation video of all my previous wins, analyzing them frame by frame, looking for evidence of cheating. The video had 3 million views in 12 hours. 3 million people watching a detailed breakdown of why I was supposedly a fraud. Major drama channels picked up the story. Commentary YouTubers made hour-long videos dissecting my character. People were going through my old content with a microscope, finding innocent moments and twisting them into evidence of a pattern of deception. It felt like the entire internet had become detectives, and I was their prime suspect. I remember sitting in that hotel lobby, waiting for my flight home, watching people recognize me and whisper to their friends. Some took photos, probably to post on their stories with captions about spotting the cheater in real life. I felt like I was wearing a scarlet letter, like everyone could see my supposed shame just by looking at me. The flight home was torture. I kept my hood up, avoided eye contact, and tried to ignore the flight attendant who clearly recognized me but didn't know whether to treat me like a celebrity or a criminal. When we landed in Ohio, there were actually local news reporters waiting. The story had gotten so big that my hometown media wanted a statement. I pushed through them without saying a word, but their questions followed me. Cade, do you have any response to the allegations? Will you be returning the prize money? How do you respond to fans who feel betrayed? Each question felt like another nail in the coffin of my career. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a competition anymore. This was about my entire life, my identity, everything I'd built. And the scariest part was, I had no idea how to fight back against something that had already been accepted as truth by millions of people. But sometimes, when everything seems hopeless, when the whole world has turned against you, help comes from the most unexpected places. The first thing that hit me when I walked into my apartment was the silence. For 4 years, coming home meant immediately checking my phone for comments, messages, collaboration requests. My apartment had always felt like mission control for this incredible life I'd built online. But now, it felt like a tomb. I sat on my couch and just stared at my setup. 3 monitors, professional lighting, the camera that had captured thousands of hours of content. Everything looked the same, but it felt completely foreign, like it belonged to someone else. Like it belonged to the person I used to be before the world decided I was a fraud. My phone kept buzzing, but now every notification felt like a threat. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, telling me I was a disgrace. Instagram DMs filled with hate so vile I couldn't read them completely. Even my email was flooded with messages from disappointed fans, some heartbroken, others furious, all convinced that I'd betrayed their trust. The worst ones were from kids. Young creators who'd looked up to me, who'd started their own channels because they'd been inspired by my journey. Reading their messages was like having my heart ripped out repeatedly. I defended you to my friends, and now I look stupid. You made me believe small creators could make it honestly. I'm quitting YouTube because if you can't make it without cheating, what hope do I have? I tried to film a response video that second day. I set up my camera, wrote out talking points, practiced what I wanted to say. But every time I hit record, the words just wouldn't come. How do you defend yourself against something that's already been accepted as fact by millions of people? How do you prove a negative? How do you convince the internet that they're wrong when they've already made up their minds? The analytics on my channel told the story better than any words could. My subscriber count was in free fall, dropping by tens of thousands every day. Videos I'd spent weeks creating were getting dislike bombed. Comment sections that used to be filled with encouragement and community were now wastelands of accusations and disappointment. But the numbers were just statistics. The real pain came from the personal betrayals. Creators I'd considered friends were making statements distancing themselves from me. A collaboration I'd been excited about got canceled. Sponsors weren't just dropping me. They were publicly announcing they were dropping me, making sure everyone knew they didn't associate with cheaters. My parents drove up from their small town to check on me. Seeing my dad, this man who'd worked construction his whole life and never fully understood what I did for a living, trying to comfort me about internet drama, was both heartbreaking and surreal. He kept saying things like, "This will blow over, son," and "People will forget about this." But I could see in his eyes that he was scared for me. My mom made my favorite dinner, the same meal she'd made when I was stressed about high school exams or college applications. But I couldn't eat. Food tasted like cardboard. Everything felt pointless. She sat next to me on the couch, holding my hand like I was 12 years old again, and asked the question that broke me. "Honey, what are you going to do now?" I didn't have an answer. For the first time in 4 years, I had no plan, no goals, no vision for the future. The life I'd built was crumbling in real time, and I felt completely powerless to stop it. Sarah came over that evening, and I could tell she'd been crying. She'd been getting harassment too, just for being associated with me. People were commenting on her posts, calling her the girlfriend of a cheater, questioning her judgment. She tried to be supportive, but I could see the strain this was putting on our relationship. She'd fallen in love with someone confident and ambitious, not this broken person who couldn't leave his apartment without feeling like the world was staring. The nights were the worst. During the day, I could distract myself with mindless TV or video games, but at night, alone with my thoughts, the weight of everything would crash down. I'd lie in bed replaying every moment of that challenge, wondering if I could have done something differently. The rational part of my brain knew I hadn't actually cheated, but the constant barrage of accusations was making me question my own memory. I started having panic attacks, real ones, where I couldn't breathe and my chest felt like it was being crushed. The first time it happened, I thought I was having a heart attack. Sarah had to talk me through breathing exercises while I hyperventilated on my bathroom floor. I was 24 years old, and I felt like my life was over. The isolation was suffocating. I couldn't go to the grocery store without people recognizing me and whispering. I couldn't check social media without seeing my name associated with words like fraud, cheater, disappointment. I couldn't even escape into other content because drama channels were still making videos about me, dissecting every aspect of my career and personality. I seriously considered just disappearing, deleting all my accounts, moving somewhere nobody knew me, starting over with a completely different life. The thought of never creating content again felt like losing a limb, but the thought of continuing to live under this cloud of suspicion felt impossible. But then something strange started happening. Buried deep in my DMs, past all the hate and disappointment, I started finding different kinds of messages. Not many, maybe one for every 100 hate messages, but they were there. People saying they didn't believe the accusations. People pointing out inconsistencies in the evidence. People who were actually thinking critically instead of just jumping on the bandwagon. Most of these messages I barely noticed, honestly. When you're drowning in negativity, a few positive voices feel insignificant. But there was one message that was different. It was longer, more detailed, more thoughtful than the others. It came from someone with a small tech channel, someone I'd never heard of before. Her name was Zara, and she said something that stopped me cold. I've been analyzing the footage frame by frame and something doesn't add up. The timeline doesn't match Braxton's story. For the first time in days, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Someone was actually investigating instead of just accepting the narrative. Someone cared enough about the truth to dig deeper. I had no idea that this message would change everything. That this stranger would become the person who saved not just my career, but my faith in humanity itself. I stared at Zara's message for probably 10 minutes straight, reading it over and over again. After days of nothing but hate, accusations, and people telling me how disappointed they were, here was someone actually questioning the narrative. Someone who cared enough about truth to look deeper than a viral tweet. My hands were shaking as I typed back to her. I was desperate, honestly. Desperate for anyone to believe me. Desperate for someone to see what I was seeing. But I was also terrified. What if she was just another person looking to expose me? What if this was some elaborate setup to get more evidence against me? But when she responded, something in her tone felt different. She wasn't approaching this as a fan or a hater. She was approaching it like a detective, like someone who genuinely cared about finding the truth, regardless of what that truth might be. Zara told me she had a background in digital forensics and had been working on a documentary about social media manipulation. She'd been following the challenge closely, not because she was a fan of any particular creator, but because she was studying how information spreads online and how quickly public opinion can shift based on incomplete evidence. What she told me next made my heart race. She'd noticed inconsistencies in the timeline of Braxton's accusations. Things that didn't add up when you looked at the raw footage versus the edited clips that were going viral. She'd been quietly analyzing everything for days, and the more she dug, the more questions she had. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe. Here was someone with actual expertise, someone who understood technology and evidence, telling me that something was wrong with the story everyone had accepted as fact. We started talking regularly, and I learned that Zara wasn't just smart, she was brilliant. She had this methodical way of breaking down information that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with puzzle solving in the first place. She approached my situation like a complex problem that needed to be solved, not a person who needed to be judged. But what struck me most about Zara wasn't her intelligence, it was her integrity. She made it clear from the beginning that she wasn't doing this to help me specifically. She was doing it because she believed in truth, because she'd seen too many people destroyed by misinformation, and because she thought the internet had a responsibility to get things right. The more we talked, the more I realized how rare that kind of principled thinking had become. In a world where everyone rushes to judgment, where going viral matters more than being accurate, Zara represented something I'd almost lost faith in. She represented the possibility that truth could still matter. She started sending me screenshots of things she'd found, inconsistencies in the metadata of the viral videos, timestamps that didn't match up with the live stream, audio anomalies that suggested editing. Each piece of evidence felt like a small light in the darkness that had consumed my life. But Zara also warned me about something that terrified me. She said that even if we found proof of my innocence, it might not matter. She'd studied other cases where false accusations had gone viral, and she knew how hard it was to change public opinion once it had solidified. The truth, she said, doesn't always win just because it's the truth. That conversation broke something inside me. I'd been holding on to this naive belief that if I could just prove my innocence, everything would go back to normal. But Zara was telling me that the damage might be permanent, that my reputation might never fully recover even with evidence on my side. I remember hanging up that call and just crying. Not the angry tears I'd shed when the accusations first started, but these deep, exhausted sobs that came from somewhere I didn't even know existed. I was mourning not just my career, but my faith in fairness, in justice, in the idea that good things happen to good people. Sarah found me like that, curled up on my couch, completely broken. She held me while I told her about Zara, about the evidence, about the possibility that we might be able to prove my innocence, but that it might not even matter. She cried too, because she could see how much this had changed me, how much of my optimism and trust had been stripped away. But then something shifted. Maybe it was having Zara believe in me, or maybe it was hitting rock bottom and realizing I had nothing left to lose. But I started to feel something I hadn't felt in days. Not hope exactly, but determination. If there was even a chance to clear my name, I had to take it. Zara and I made a plan to meet in person. She lived about 3 hours away, and she wanted to show me her analysis in detail. The drive there was surreal. I kept my hood up, wore sunglasses, and prayed nobody would recognize me. But for the first time since this started, I was driving towards something instead of running away from it. When I walked into Zara's apartment and saw her setup, I knew I was in the presence of someone who could actually help me. Multiple monitors, professional software, and a wall covered with printouts and notes about my case. She'd been working on this for days, treating it with the same seriousness that law enforcement would give to a criminal investigation. But before I tell you what Zara discovered, what we uncovered together that would change everything, I need to ask you something. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt falsely accused or misunderstood, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support means everything to me, especially after going through something like this. And drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a situation where the truth seemed impossible to prove? How did you handle it? I read every single comment, and your stories helped me feel less alone in this crazy journey. Because what Zara was about to show me would reveal that this wasn't just about a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was about something much darker, much more calculated than I could have ever imagined. Walking into Zara's apartment felt like entering a different world. While my life had been falling apart, she'd been building what looked like a command center dedicated to finding the truth. The walls were covered with printed screenshots, timeline charts, and notes written in her precise handwriting. It was overwhelming and comforting at the same time, seeing how seriously she was taking this when the rest of the world had already moved on to the next drama. She offered me coffee, and I noticed her hands were stained with ink from all the printing and note-taking. This wasn't just a casual investigation for her. She'd been losing sleep over this, working late into the night because she genuinely believed that what happened to me was wrong. Before we start, she said, settling into her chair, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to show you is going to be hard to process. Not because it proves you're guilty, but because it proves just how calculated this attack on you really was. My stomach dropped. I'd been hoping for simple answers, clear evidence that would exonerate me quickly. But the way Zara was talking suggested something much more complex and sinister. She pulled up the first piece of evidence on her main monitor. It was the original live stream footage, but she'd isolated specific audio tracks that most people would never think to examine. Listen to this, she said, adjusting her headphones and handing me a pair. What I heard made my blood run cold. It was Braxton's voice, but not from the main broadcast. This was background audio, picked up by ambient microphones from before the challenge even started. He was talking to someone off camera about making sure I didn't win, about having a plan ready if I got too close to victory. This conversation happened 3 hours before your puzzle challenge, Zara explained. 3 hours before you supposedly cheated. He was already planning to accuse you of something. I felt sick. While I'd been nervous but excited about competing, while I'd been texting my family about how well things were going, Braxton had been plotting my destruction. The betrayal cut deeper than any of the public accusations had. But Zara wasn't done. She showed me deleted social media posts that she'd managed to recover through cached pages and screenshots. Braxton had been planning something he called Operation Takedown for weeks before the challenge. There were posts about eliminating his biggest competition, about making sure certain creators didn't get the recognition they didn't deserve. Look at the dates, Zara said, pointing to timestamps. He started planning this before he even knew what the challenges would be. This wasn't about you actually cheating. This was about removing you as competition. Reading those posts felt like being punched in the gut repeatedly. Braxton had seen me as a threat, and instead of trying to beat me fairly, he'd decided to destroy me completely. The worst part was realizing how long he'd been watching me, studying my content, waiting for the right moment to strike. Zara pulled up another screen showing the puzzle station footage from multiple angles. "Now watch this carefully," she said. "The panel you thought had been tampered with? It had been deliberately loosened, but not by accident." She showed me security footage from the night before the challenge. There was Braxton, staying late after the official setup time, approaching my puzzle station when he thought no cameras were watching. But Zara had found an angle that caught everything. "He loosened that panel on purpose," she explained. "He knew you'd notice it, knew you'd use that information to solve the puzzle faster. And then he'd have his evidence of cheating. It was a setup from the beginning. I had to pause the video and just sit with that information." The moment I'd been beating myself up over, the decision that had haunted me for weeks, had been orchestrated by someone who wanted to destroy me. I hadn't stumbled into a mistake. I'd walked into a trap. But the evidence kept coming. Zara had found payment records showing that Braxton had hired people to create fake evidence videos. She'd discovered a group chat where multiple creators had coordinated their responses to amplify the accusations. She'd even found evidence of bot accounts created specifically to spread the hashtag that had destroyed my reputation. "This wasn't just Braxton acting alone," Zara said, her voice getting angrier as she showed me more evidence. "This was a coordinated attack involving multiple people, fake accounts, and paid content. They turned destroying you into a business model." The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. While I'd been dealing with what I thought was organic outrage from disappointed fans, I'd actually been the target of a sophisticated disinformation campaign. People I'd never even met had been paid to create content calling me a fraud. What broke me completely was when Zara showed me that this wasn't Braxton's first time doing something like this. She'd found evidence of him using similar tactics against other creators in the past. Smaller creators who'd been destroyed so thoroughly that they'd quit content creation entirely. "He's been building his career by systematically eliminating competition," Zara explained. "You're just his latest victim, but you're also the first one with someone willing to fight back." I started crying then. Not from sadness, but from a mixture of rage and relief. Rage that someone could be so calculating and cruel. Relief that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts about my own innocence had been right all along. Zara handed me tissues and let me process everything for a few minutes. When I finally looked up, she was staring at her screens with this determined expression that reminded me why I'd trusted her in the first place. "We have enough evidence to clear your name," she said. "But I need you to understand that simply posting this might not be enough. Braxton has 3 million followers and a lot of influence. If we're going to do this, we need to be strategic about how we reveal the truth." The weight of that statement hit me hard. Even with overwhelming evidence of my innocence, even with proof that I'd been the victim of a deliberate attack, there was no guarantee that justice would prevail. The same internet that had been so quick to condemn me might be just as quick to ignore evidence that contradicted the narrative they'd already accepted. But looking at Zara, seeing how much work she'd put into uncovering the truth, seeing how much she believed in fighting for what was right, I knew I had to try, not just for my career, but for every other creator who might become Braxton's next target. "What do we do?" I asked. Zara smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "We take him down." The next 3 days felt like living in a spy movie. Zara and I worked around the clock, diving deeper into what we'd uncovered, and with each new piece of evidence, the conspiracy became more shocking and more personal. Zara had this methodical way of investigating that both impressed and terrified me. She'd stay up until 3 in the morning following digital breadcrumbs, cross-referencing timestamps, and building what she called the complete picture. Watching her work made me realize how naive I'd been about the darker side of content creation. The breakthrough that changed everything came on the second night. Zara had been analyzing the metadata from all the viral videos about my supposed cheating when she found something that made her actually gasp out loud. "Cade, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking with excitement and anger. These videos weren't just coordinated, they were pre-planned. She showed me creation dates on files that proved several of the reaction videos had been made before the challenge even happened. Content creators who claimed to be spontaneously responding to my cheating had actually prepared their responses in advance, complete with thumbnails and titles ready to go. The realization hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been genuinely competing, genuinely trying my best, an entire network of people had been preparing to destroy me regardless of what actually happened. They'd been so confident in their plan that they'd made content about my downfall before I'd even supposedly fallen. But what hurt most was seeing the names involved. Creators I'd looked up to, people whose content I'd genuinely enjoyed, had been part of this coordinated attack. Some of them I'd even met at events, had conversations with, had considered friendly acquaintances. Learning that they'd been willing to destroy me for views and money felt like discovering that people you trusted had been planning to rob your house. Zara found the group chat that had coordinated everything. Reading those messages was like watching people casually discuss ending my career over coffee. They talked about me like I wasn't a real person, like I was just an obstacle to be removed. They shared strategies for making their content more engaging, discussed which hashtags would trend fastest, even joked about how easy it would be to cancel someone with my subscriber count. "Look at this message," Zara said, pointing to something Braxton had written 2 days before the challenge. He literally says, "Operation Takedown is a go. Target acquired. This is going to be easier than I thought." Reading that message broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. This wasn't about competition or jealousy or even money. This was about someone who enjoyed destroying people, who got satisfaction from watching careers crumble and dreams die. The evidence kept mounting. Zara discovered that Braxton had paid a production assistant to help set up the trap with the puzzle panel. She found records of payments to bot farms that had amplified the hashtags. She even uncovered evidence that some of the disappointed fan comments on my videos had been written by the same people using multiple accounts. "This goes deeper than I initially thought," Zara said, rubbing her eyes after another late night of investigation. "This isn't just about you. Braxton has been doing this for years, systematically targeting creators he sees as competition." She showed me evidence of at least 4 other creators who'd been destroyed by similar campaigns. Smaller creators who'd been rising fast, who'd been gaining momentum, who'd suddenly found themselves accused of various wrongdoings that had ended their careers. All of them had one thing in common: they'd been potential threats to Braxton's dominance in his niche. Learning about these other victims made me feel sick and angry and determined all at once. I wasn't just fighting for my own reputation anymore. I was fighting for everyone who'd been destroyed by this system. Everyone who'd been too small or too isolated to fight back effectively. But the most devastating discovery came when Zara found Braxton's private planning documents. He'd actually created profiles on each of his targets, studying their content, their personalities, their potential weaknesses. My profile was 3 pages long, detailing everything from my posting schedule to my relationship status to my family background. "He's been watching you for over a year," Zara said quietly. "This wasn't spontaneous. He's been planning to take you down since you hit 500,000 subscribers." Reading my own profile felt violating in a way I can't adequately describe. Seeing how someone had studied me like a predator studies prey, how they'd cataloged my vulnerabilities and planned to exploit them, made me feel exposed and hunted. Braxton knew things about my content and my personality that even some of my friends didn't know. The worst part was a section titled "Emotional Pressure Points," where he'd identified exactly how to hurt me most effectively. He'd noted my close relationship with my family, my insecurity about being taken seriously as a creator, my tendency to internalize criticism. He'd weaponized my own personality against me. "This is sociopathic behavior," Zara said, and I could hear the disgust in her voice. "This isn't normal competition. This is someone who enjoys causing psychological harm." By the 3rd day, we had enough evidence to not just clear my name, but to expose an entire network of manipulation and abuse in the creator economy. But Zara warned me that revealing everything would be like going to war with some very powerful people. "Once we release this, there's no going back," she said. "Braxton and his network are going to fight dirty. They're going to try to discredit us, to claim the evidence is fake, to turn this around on you somehow. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about all the other creators who'd been destroyed, about the victims who'd never gotten justice, about the fact that Braxton was probably already planning his next target. I thought about the weeks of hell I'd endured, the damage to my relationships, the nights I'd considered giving up on everything I'd worked for. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's burn it all down." But neither of us could have predicted just how explosive the truth would be, or how quickly everything would change once the world saw what we'd uncovered. The night before we released everything, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways Braxton and his network might retaliate. But I also kept thinking about those other creators who'd been destroyed, who'd never gotten their chance at justice. This wasn't just about me anymore. Zara had insisted we do this right. Instead of just posting everything randomly, we'd created what she called the Truth Project, a comprehensive presentation of all the evidence, organized in a way that would be impossible to dismiss or ignore. She'd spent 2 days editing together a video that told the complete story, with timestamps, audio evidence, and documentation that even the most skeptical viewer couldn't argue with. "We get one shot at this," she'd told me. "If we mess up the presentation, if we give them any room to poke holes in our story, they'll use that to discredit everything else." The morning we went live, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. Zara had driven to my apartment so we could release everything simultaneously across multiple platforms. She'd even contacted several drama channels and news outlets in advance, giving them exclusive access to the evidence so they could verify it independently. I hit publish on the video at exactly 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The title was simple: "The Truth About My False Accusations, Full Evidence Revealed." But the content was anything but simple. 47 minutes of devastating evidence that exposed not just Braxton's conspiracy against me, but his entire pattern of destroying other creators. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within the first hour, the video had 100,000 views, and the comments were exploding with shock, outrage, and apologies. People who'd been calling me a fraud just weeks earlier were now expressing horror at what had been done to me. But watching the truth spread felt surreal after weeks of watching lies dominate the conversation. The same platforms that had amplified false accusations were now amplifying evidence of my innocence, and the speed at which public opinion shifted was both vindicating and terrifying. The hashtag #TruthForCade started trending within 3 hours. Drama channels were making emergency videos breaking down our evidence. Major news outlets were picking up the story. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications, but for the first time in weeks, they were positive. The most emotional moment came when I started reading comments from the other creators Braxton had destroyed. People I'd never met were thanking me for giving them a voice, for proving that they hadn't been crazy, that they'd been victims of the same systematic abuse. One message particularly broke me. "I quit content creation 2 years ago because of what Braxton did to me. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for showing me I wasn't alone." Reading that, knowing that our investigation had given someone validation for their pain, made every sleepless night worth it. But the most satisfying part was watching Braxton's world crumble in real time. His subscriber count started dropping by the thousands every hour. Sponsors were publicly dropping him. Other creators who'd been part of his network were scrambling to distance themselves, deleting old tweets and making apology videos. Braxton himself tried to respond, posting a video claiming that our evidence was fabricated, that this was all a desperate attempt to salvage my career. But his response was weak, defensive, and full of holes. The comments section on his video was brutal, with his own fans turning against him as they realized the scope of what he'd done. The production company that had run the challenge issued a public apology to me and announced they were implementing new security measures to prevent future manipulation. They also revealed that their own investigation had confirmed our findings and that Braxton was banned from all future events. Major creators started making videos supporting me, apologizing for believing the accusations without evidence, and calling for better standards in how the community handles allegations. Some of the apologies felt genuine, others felt like damage control, but all of them helped restore my reputation. The most unexpected response came from brands. Companies that had dropped me weren't just quietly reaching out to restore partnerships. They were publicly apologizing and offering bigger deals than I'd ever had before. Some even wanted to sponsor content about media literacy and the importance of fact-checking, using my story as a case study. But the personal responses meant more than any business opportunity. My subscriber count not only recovered, but grew beyond where it had been before the accusations. People weren't just subscribing to support me. They were subscribing because they respected how I'd handled the situation, how I'd fought for the truth instead of just accepting defeat. Sarah cried when she saw the response. She'd stood by me through the worst of it, had endured harassment and doubt, and seeing the vindication felt like a weight lifting off both our shoulders. My parents called, proud and relieved, finally understanding that their son hadn't just been playing games online, but had been fighting a real battle for his integrity. The most powerful moment came 3 days after the release when Zara's subscriber count hit 2 million. Watching her channel explode, seeing people recognize her brilliance and integrity, felt like the universe correcting itself. She'd risked her own reputation to help a stranger, and the internet was rewarding her for choosing truth over safety. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from the creator community itself. People started sharing their own stories of manipulation and abuse, creating a movement around transparency and accountability. The conversation shifted from just my specific case to the broader problems in the industry, the toxic competition, The willingness to destroy others for personal gain. Braxton's network completely collapsed. The other creators involved faced their own reckonings as evidence of their participation spread. Some lost significant portions of their audiences, others lost sponsorship deals, and a few even quit content creation entirely. The production assistant who'd helped with the setup was fired and blacklisted from the industry. But the most satisfying moment was when Braxton himself posted what everyone recognized as a surrender. A short, scripted apology that admitted to poor judgment, without taking full responsibility for the systematic abuse he'd perpetrated. His comments were disabled, his like-to-dislike ratio was devastating, and his influence was effectively ended. Looking back now, I realize that getting falsely accused was simultaneously the worst and best thing that ever happened to my career. It nearly destroyed me, but it also revealed who I really was, what I was capable of when everything was on the line. More importantly, it connected me with Zara, someone who became not just a collaborator, but a true friend. Someone who showed me that there are still people willing to fight for truth even when it's difficult, even when it's not profitable, even when it puts them at risk. The experience changed how I approach content creation, how I treat other creators, and how I think about the responsibility that comes with having a platform. But most of all, it taught me that the truth really can prevail, but only if someone is willing to fight for it. So here we are, 6 months later, and I'm sitting in the same apartment where I once thought my life was over. But everything has changed. My channel isn't just back to where it was before the accusations. It's stronger than I ever imagined possible. I'm at 1.2 million subscribers now. But more importantly, I have a community that's built on something real. Something that was tested by fire and came out stronger. The numbers tell one story, but the real story is about what this experience taught me about human nature, about truth, and about the kind of person I want to be. Every morning when I wake up, I remember how close I came to losing everything, and it makes me grateful for things I used to take for granted. Zara and I are still close friends, and we've been working on that documentary about social media manipulation that she mentioned when we first started talking. It's become bigger than either of us expected, featuring interviews with other creators who've been victims of coordinated attacks, experts in digital forensics, and even some reformed trolls who've admitted to participating in cancel campaigns. The documentary has become my passion project, but it's also been therapeutic. Talking to other people who've been through similar experiences has helped me process the trauma of those weeks when I felt like the entire world had turned against me. I've learned that what happened to me wasn't unique, that there are predators in every online community who build their success by destroying others. But I've also learned about resilience, about the power of truth, and about the incredible capacity people have for admitting when they're wrong. Some of the most meaningful messages I've received have come from people who initially believed the accusations against me but later apologized after seeing the evidence. Their willingness to change their minds gives me hope for the internet as a whole. The relationship with my family has grown stronger too. My parents now understand not just what I do for a living, but the real challenges and dangers that come with having a public platform. They've become my biggest supporters, but they've also become more media literate themselves, questioning things they see online instead of just accepting them at face value. Sarah and I got engaged last month, going through something that intense together. Seeing how she stood by me when everything looked hopeless made me realize that she's the person I want to face any future challenges with. She jokes that if our relationship can survive a viral cancellation attempt, it can survive anything. But the most profound change has been in how I approach my content and my responsibility as a creator. I'm more careful about what I say about other people, more thoughtful about how my words might be interpreted, and more committed to using my platform to promote critical thinking and media literacy. I've also become an advocate for other creators who find themselves in similar situations. I've helped 3 other people who were falsely accused, connecting them with Zara and using my platform to amplify their stories. There's something powerful about being able to turn your worst experience into a way to help others. The creator industry has changed too, partly because of what we exposed. Platforms have implemented better systems for handling accusations, drama channels are more careful about fact-checking before making videos, and there's a growing awareness that viral outrage can destroy innocent people's lives. Braxton disappeared from the internet entirely after his subscriber count dropped below 100,000, and his remaining sponsors dropped him. I heard through the grapevine that he's working a regular job now, which honestly feels like justice. He built his career by destroying others, and ultimately, that strategy destroyed him. But I don't spend much time thinking about Braxton anymore. Holding on to anger about what he did would just give him more power over my life, and I refused to let him have that. Instead, I focus on the positive changes that came from surviving his attack, on the relationships that were strengthened, and on the platform I now have to make a difference. The experience taught me that your character isn't defined by what happens to you, but by how you respond to what happens to you. I could have let the false accusations break me, could have quit content creation and disappeared into obscurity. Instead, I chose to fight for the truth, and that choice changed everything. I've learned that the internet can be cruel and unfair, but it can also be a place where justice prevails when good people decide to stand up for what's right. Zara could have ignored my situation and focused on her own content, but she chose to help a stranger because it was the right thing to do. That choice changed both our lives. Most importantly, I've learned that truth really does matter, even in an age of viral misinformation and mob mentality. It might take time, it might require people willing to fight for it, but truth has a way of surfacing eventually. As we wrap up this story, I want to ask you to do something important. If this series taught you anything about the importance of seeking truth before judgment, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Like this video, if you believe in second chances and the power of truth. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message about resilience and fighting for what's right. And most importantly, comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever jumped to conclusions about someone online? What will you do differently next time? Have you ever been falsely accused of something? How did you handle it? I read every single comment, and your stories help create a community where we can learn from each other's experiences. The internet can be a cruel place, but it can also be a force for good when people like Zara use their skills to fight for what's right. Let's all try to be more like Zara, curious, thorough, and committed to truth over trends. Thanks for following my story, and remember, always question what you see online, always seek the truth, and always stand up for what's right, even when it's not popular. The next time you see someone being accused of something online, maybe take a moment to ask for evidence before joining the mob. I'll see you in the next video, and I promise it'll be a lot less dramatic than this series.